Hi everyone, welcome back to the next video in our crafting on a budget series. Now in this series we've looked at a whole lot of things that you can make yourself and cost-cutting hacks. Today there's going to be three parts to this video today. The first thing I'm going to do is to actually look at a basic kit. So if you're just starting out crafting, what is it that you really need? The next thing I'm going to do is to look at some hacks for tools that you can make yourself really easily. And in the third part of this video, I want to pose some questions that will help you decide whether some of those bigger ticket items are really worth the investment. Because let's face it, there's not many of us that can just go and buy everything that we want when we want it. So we're going to work through some questions about thinking about, do I really need this and what is it going to do? But okay, let's come back to the start. Our basic kit. What do you really need? So if you're just starting out crafting, or indeed if you've been around for a while and you're going, oh my goodness, I've got all this stuff and I want to cut down and I want to streamline and da 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 da. What is it that you really need? Now, obviously, the answer to some of that is going to depend what sort of craft you're doing. But I'm going to start with some of the things that really you need for most things that you're going to be doing. And the first thing I'm going to look at today is scissors. Now, I'm going to suggest that you need a big pair and a little pair. And the really important thing about this is that they need to be sharp. All right, your big pair is great obviously for bigger things. So for example, if I was going to cut around this gel print, I would use my bigger scissors. Smaller ones, they're great for fussy cutting or anything that is really fiddly or you need to get in there. So for example, if I wanted to cut these circles out rather than the whole print, I would go for my smaller scissors. So okay, so a couple of pairs of scissors. Now the other cutty thing that I find that is really useful and is inexpensive is a box cutter. You know the ones, you break the blade off when it gets blunt, it's retractable, so you've got a safety thing, and honestly these are a couple of bucks in your hardware store. They're really good. You can again use them for cutting, so I might put my ruler down a straight line and run my blade down there. There we go. Which brings us on to the next thing, rulers. Now, personal preference, really, I have both metal and plastic rulers. As a basic, again, I would go for one small one, one big one, and the plastic versus metal is really up to you. The metal ones are a little bit more durable. This is very old, this one, and I don't know whether you can see on the video, but the edges are starting to get quite rough and quite damaged. So durability wise, go for a metal one, but again, if you're just starting out and you are really limited in funds, a plastic one's going to work. I find the two sizes useful, again depending on what size you're working on. Next thing you're probably going to need is a pencil, and again, really basic, schoolyard pencil, HB, nothing fancy, you just need it to make your marks, measure, when you're measuring, anything like that. And the final thing that I think is absolutely necessary, and if we're talking absolute basics, is glue. Now, again, this somewhat is going to depend on what medium you're working with, but on a basic level, a glue stick is useful, and some PVA glue. Now, I know that you can get something called Elmer's school glue or other school glues, but find something that says PVA. You can do all sorts of things with this, as well as sticking, and if you watch some of the previous videos in this series, you'll see that I've used it to create things like texture paste and gesso and things like that. Now, if you're going to be, you can buy this in, small bottles. If you're going to be doing a lot of crafting, I find it's much cheaper to buy in bulk like this, and this is a 2 litre. But again, you can buy anything from this size upwards. All right, so we've got glue, scissors, ruler, pencil, and a box cutter. That's your really basic kit. Beyond that, really depends which way you're going to go with your crafting. Now, the next sort of things I'm going to show you are probably, I would be thinking about mixed media work, junk journals, card making, things like that. So the next thing I would suggest is really useful, and this is to have a glue brush. And I would say keep this purely for gluing, because over time the glue does build up, and you will see with this one it's getting a little bit stuck down here. But find an old brush and keep it for your gluing. That's really handy. So again, I probably would include that in my really basic kit. Okay, beyond that, what's useful that's not going to cost the earth? Well, I always think a hole punch. And again, at a very basic level, there's your office hole punch. If you want something slightly different, you can go for one of these, which just punches a single hole. You have a little bit more control about where the hole goes. And this was a cheap one actually, and it works, but in varying degrees. But it is a little bit easier than, if you want your hole in a certain place, it's a little bit easier than trying to sort of look and, you know, see have you got that in the right place. So some kind of hole punch is useful. The other thing that I find really useful is a black pigment pen. Now, these come, there's various makes of these. This is a Stedler, that's a Micron. I know that they're quite well-known makes. These are from a set of cheaper ones. The important thing is to know that it needs to say water resistant or waterproof, so that when you're using them in conjunction with other media, they're not going to run. And these come in a variety of sizes. So here you'll see I've got a 0.1, a 0.05, a 0.8, 0.3. You know, again, at a basic level, just get one to start with. So a black pigment liner. The other thing I have found really useful, and again it's a low cost item, is a gel pen. And I particularly like a white one and a couple of metallics. Now, can't find where my silver one's gone today to show you, but you know, gel pens, again, here in New Zealand, you're looking at sort of $4 or $5 maybe per pen. So not a big ticket item, but really, really useful. Card making, mixed media work, junk journaling, all those kind of things. I find that they're invaluable. Now, again, depending on what you want to do, I'm going to flick back to glues for a minute, because your basic glues, your glue stick and your PVA will do all your basic stuff. You may find that you need something slightly stronger as well. Now, here in New Zealand, and I know this is available in Australia as well, we get something called Tiger Grip glue. And it says paper, cardwood, plastics, metal, cork, fabric, carpets, leather, canvas, and many others. Okay, it dries clear, and it's great. It is multi-purpose. It is stronger than PVA or a glue stick. Now, I know in other countries you can get things like Fabri-Tac and art glitter glue. Again, these glues are slightly dearer than your PVA or your glue stick, but you're going to use less of them, and you only need to use them on the occasions when those other glues are not strong enough. Now, whilst we're talking about glues, if you're doing any kind of multimedia work, you may well find that something like a matte gel medium or a Mod Podge are also useful. These are a bit more multi-purpose. You can use them to glue, but also to seal things as well. Now, as you can see, my matte gel medium is right at the end, and I've been using up the Mod Podge that I also have. So for me, this is quite interesting because I've been able to compare the two. And what I would say is get one and try it, see how you go, and maybe try the other one next time, see which you prefer. It is purely a pure personal preference thing. They basically do the same thing. All right. Now, beyond that, it depends. You're going to want some kind of colour. Now, that might be acrylic paints, watercolours, ink sprays, colouring pencils, water reactive pencils, paint pens, and that really depends on what you want to do. And I'm going to say this again, I've said this in all my videos. When you're starting out, you do not need to spend massive amounts of money on the big brand products. Don't get me wrong, I am not knocking those products. They are usually great quality, and if you can afford them, go for them. But when you're starting out, particularly if your artwork is just for you or just to gift to some family friends, you know, if you're making a card, something like that, you do not need top quality paints. So if you're wanting to get into watercolours, treat yourself to a cheap set, see how you go. Once you've got a feel for that particular medium and you know that you like it and you want to carry on and do more, then you can go buy yourself the better quality one. And the same goes for paints and anything else that you're using, really. I would always say, you know, start with a basic quality one. If you find you really like it, then you can work up. And in all honesty, because much of what I do is for me, I still use the cheaper paints, to be honest. For multimedia work or work on my gel plate, I find that they're great. So I think it's a case of testing things out and seeing what you're happy with. Now, a little caveat, if you're wanting archival quality, or you're wanting something that is going to be on display in the sunlight and you're wanting it to last for years, go for the better quality. But honestly, when you're starting out, start out with the student quality paints, the lesser known brands, and see how you go. If you like it, if you find it's what you want to do, you can go further. And kind of with that, when you're starting out, just buy a sort of a basic range of paintbrushes, you know. This is a fan brush, which it might look sort of specialised if you like, but actually it's really, really useful, and you can create a whole load of techniques with it, such as splattering if you're doing multimedia work or cards or anything like that. So I find one of those is really good in a basic kit, and then you can just get yourself a couple in different shapes, different sizes, depending on what you're wanting to be doing. And it also depends on the scale you're working on. You know, if you're working on a small A5 or smaller, if you're working a little journal like that or small pieces of paper, you probably don't want great big brushes. If you're working on a massive canvas that's 1 metre by 1 metre, you're going to want some bigger brushes. So think about what you're doing. All right, another couple of things that are not necessarily must-haves for the basic kit, but are quite useful and again are not big ticket items. I would say a bone folder is often useful, and it gives you really nice sharp creases. And the other thing that I use an awful lot is my corner rounder punch. Again, does depend on what you're doing, but those are two things that I would say are not big ticket items, but that I personally have found I use a huge amount. So there we go. There's some basic things. Now, if you think about it, if you've got those things, there is a huge amount that you can create. Now, there's one more, or actually it's two more things that, again, don't need to be big ticket items, but I have found are really useful in a range of crafts. And one of those is a small gel plate. and to go along with that, a brayer. Now again, these do not need to be massively expensive. This, which is a very dirty gel plate at the moment, I've been busy. This is a 5x7 gel plate. This is the Gel Elf make, which I have always used. I love them. I get great results. I also know that there's a couple of well-known artists on YouTube who have reviewed the Gel Elf plates with good reviews. They are cheaper than the well-known brand, and they're great again if you're starting out. Fantastic. 5x7, it's not a massive big ticket item, and again, a brayer, you can pick these up in New Zealand. We can pick these up round about between $5 and $10. So again, not an absolute necessary, but something that I've found I use a whole heap, and is really worth buying. Just before we move away from the basic kit, there are two other items which are not absolutely basic kit, but I would suggest are really handy. And this is the first one. This is a trimmer. Now you can get them in this form where they have a little blade that runs back and forth along here, or you can get a guillotine which the handle comes down and makes a cut. These will help you immensely if, like me, you're not very good at cutting straight lines. And this one, you will see, has quite helpfully got some of the regular sizes on. So it's got 5x7, 4x6, A5, you know, all those type things. So sort of next level from the very basic, this is a piece of kit that I would recommend and find that you will use immensely. And the other thing, again, this depends somewhat on what you're doing, but particularly if you're doing a lot of card making, or you're doing a lot of things where you're folding, a scoreboard is a really useful piece of kit. Now, you don't need a scoreboard. You can use a ruler and your bone folder, or you can use a ruler and one of these little embossing tools. They work just as well. But a scoreboard will save you time and does make life a little easier. Now, I've only ever had this small one. You can get big A4 size ones, like the same size as the paper cutter. I do use mine mainly for card making, or if I'm making like folded pockets or tuck spots to go in a journal. But I do find that this is useful. It helps me to be more accurate. And I know that some of these come as a kit with instructions for and size guides for making envelopes as well. So if you are at the stage of looking for one of these, you can sometimes get like the multi-purpose kit if you like. Okay. Okay guys, in this section we're going to look at a couple of quick hacks for things that you can use from around the house or that you can make. And the first one is, and actually thinking about this is probably something else I would maybe add to a basic kit, and this is a black ink pad. And I would go for an archival ink pad or one that says waterproof, because these are useful for a whole range of things. Now, one of the things that we often see people using them for is to colour the edges of something they have made. Now, this is just a tag off some clothing, which I've kept to cover and use. But what you see people doing is taking their ink pad and an inker and going around the edges like this. Now, we all know what this is, don't we? And whilst I don't want to encourage anybody to become an alcoholic, there's nothing wrong with a good excuse for a glass of bubbly wine. And these are what these corks come from. And this is so simple, guys. Look, here's your cork. Gosh, this one came from Champagne, so someone must have given that to me. All right, so there's your cork. And this is a piece of felt, and this is the type of felt that you buy to go under the feet of chairs and things like that to stop them scratching the floor. So you'll see it's quite thick. Now you can use ordinary felt. I have found I get better results with this one. And you literally pop your cork on, draw around it, cut out the circle of felt to fit on here and stick it on. And you get your own perfectly good ink dauber or inker, or do you know, I don't even know the proper name for them because I've never bought one. I've always made my own. But these work, they're fantastic. Look at that. And what's that going to cost you? An offcut of felt, well, and maybe a bottle of wine. Bet you get some enjoyment out of that too. All right, that's my first quick hack for the day. My next one is a scraper. Now these, and again, I'm sure there's a really proper name for these. They come in all shapes and sizes. That's a branded one. These are cheapy ones. This, I don't know, but it works the same. They're great for all sorts of things. You can use them as paint spreaders. You can use them for scraping bits off, for burnishing things down, all sorts of things. Really useful. But again, you don't actually need to buy them. You got an old store card, or this came with some eyeglasses, I think. There you go, it's got someone's lens data on the back. And you can see this has been used for spreading paint. And again, you'll find some of them are more flexible than others. Find one that suits your needs. The other thing that you can do with store cards like this is to make a corner cutter for tags. Now, I did say earlier that my corner rounder was something that I bought and have used a huge amount, but this I use almost as much. Now let me show you. I'm looking on my desk for a piece of card here. Here we go. Now if you imagine that we wanted to make this into a tag, I'm going to grab my scissors. It's incredibly hard when you're cutting a tag to get those corners exactly the same and symmetrical, and if you don't, your tag looks odd, let's face it. So grab your old store card and cut a couple of the corners at different angles, and then when you're wanting to make your tags, you line up the side and the top, you flip it over and you do exactly the same. There's your tag top. With the other corner, so that was with the big cut corner, the smaller cut corner, line it up, flip it over, cut it again. There we go. And again, you can cut depending on what angle. I could cut this one somewhere in between these two, and so depending on what sort of size and shape you want, you can do. Now the other thing you can do, if you notice, this particular card does have rounded corners. If you don't have a corner rounder, you can use those to create rounded corners. So just going to cut these tags. There we go. You can pop that on there, and as you can see, you've immediately got a guide for rounding your corner. Now this is where the smaller scissors come in handy. There we go, pop that bit off. I hadn't got that lined up quite right, but you'll see what I mean. I'll do this one better. That was terrible, wasn't it? There we go, nice round corner. I don't know whether we can rescue that one now. No, I'll sort that out later. So, old store card invaluable, and you can see this one's been used for spreading paint as well. Right, so that's another little hack. The next one to think about is paint palettes and glue pots and things like that. Now you'll see I have a whole load of these. These are, I think we get like a little jelly that we sometimes buy in these. And these are great for mixing paint, for mixing texture paste, anything like that. And if you've watched any of these videos, you'll see me using them. They stack, and in actual fact, I will show you, I have a little bit of texture paste in here that I made probably a week ago, and because I've had them stacked together like that, it's kept it soft and airtight really, so really useful. Alright, this I just wanted to show you. This came out of a box of chocolates, I think, or biscuits, I'm not sure, it wasn't something I bought, but great for paint, glue, if you're just wanting a little bit of something. Things like this are invaluable. These actually also you can use for mark making. So you can press into your paint or into your gel plate and you get some really cool marks. The same as you would an egg carton, but these obviously are washable and you can reuse them. So keep your eyes out around the house for things like this that you can use. Now I'm going to show you one more trick today. Oh no, I've got two more. Wow. They are both a little bit more craft specific, if you like. But for those of you who have done or have watched any videos about gel printing, you will notice that people often have one of these, and this is called a baron. And again, these can be quite expensive. This one is a circular piece of wood with a doorknob screwed onto the top, and again the thick felt on the bottom. And how you use these, when you have your gel plate and you've got your paint on and you've put your paper on top ready to pull your print, these are used for pressing down and making sure you've got good contact and picking up all that lovely paint on your print. Again, not an absolutely necessary item, but if you're handy or you've got someone around that's handy, circle of wood and a doorknob, you've got yourself a baron. Now I'm actually having a look because I've got another one here. Mr. Jem took my request for one of these to heart, and I have a real fancy one like this as well. He found another different sort of knob. So there you go, something else that you can make reasonably easily. Okay, so this is the last quick fix tool I'm going to show you. You are probably going to need to purchase a little bit of balsa wood for this. But again, in most DIY stores, you'll find balsa wood is relatively cheap. And this is great if you're making junk journals. So I'm just going to grab some paper because the easiest way is to show you this. I would like you to imagine these are the pages of my junk journal, and I'm getting ready to stitch the signature into the cover. And what I need to do is to make, if I'm doing a simple pamphlet stitch, I need to make 3 holes through these layers of paper. Now that can be reasonably easy, but it can also be quite tricky in that things move around. So you might want to use a peg to hold things, but I have found this little, and it's almost like an animal trough in shape. But if I put my papers in there, and then I would mark where I want the holes. And you can often use a little jig like this. And I think that one is potentially a little bit big, but here we go, here's a smaller one. Use a little jig like this, centre it in your pages. Now, what you use to make a hole is entirely up to you. You can use a big needle. If your pages are not too thick, you can use something like this, which is actually just a bamboo kebab skewer. If you look, there you go, that goes through nicely. The other thing that I often use, and this is I think it's called a weeding tool, from made by Cricket, and that makes great holes. Now, what you will notice is I had no problem. My pages stayed together, and I'm not damaging my worktop because this keeps them off any work surface. Now, this is made from 4 pieces of wood. We have 2 ends and 2 sides. The sides are glued in a V shape onto the ends, and you leave a little gap in the middle, and because it's balsa wood, it's lovely and soft, and your whatever you're poking holes with will actually poke into the balsa wood as well. Now again, cheap, simple, easy to make. What I'll do with this is I'll actually put some measurements and some instructions together in a Word document, and I'll put it on my Facebook page for you, so that if you do want to make one of these, you can just print the Word doc off, and you'll be way good to go. And I'll put a link to my Facebook page down below. So there you go. If you're doing lots of journals, really handy tool. Something else I use a lot. All right, so we've covered some basic stuff. Let's now move on and think about some questions to ask yourself if you're thinking about buying bigger ticket items. Okay, everyone, in the third section of this video, I want to think about how do we make those decisions about some of the bigger ticket items that we might want to purchase. And do you know what? I've been racking my brains about how to make this interesting for you. There's not going to be a lot of visuals, I'm afraid. What I am going to do is to put the questions up onto the screen for you, so that you can go back and forward and have a look if you want to. Because, you know, sometimes we get that, oh, you know, I've seen my favourite crafter on YouTube using this new fancy machine, or I've seen this piece of equipment and oh my goodness, I have to have it. Well, that's okay if your crafting budget allows, but sometimes we get that fear of missing out, fear that we can't do and create all these beautiful things if we don't have this certain piece of equipment. And an example I will use was when I first bought a Cricut machine, so which is I think the other brands that do the same are called a Silhouette, or it's a cutting machine that links to the computer, and it was a big ticket item for me, and I kind of really needed to think about whether I wanted to spend, or whether it was okay for me to spend the amount of money. And so I came up with a range of questions to help when you're thinking about, you know, that new whizzy piece of equipment that I need. And the first question to ask yourself is, how much does this cost as a percentage of my crafting budget? Now, do you have a specific crafting budget? Do you put aside money each month, or do you allocate a certain amount each month, or do you just look at your overall finances? Those are questions you have to ask yourself. But if you have a crafting budget, what percentage of my budget does this item cost, or do I need to save up several months of my crafting budget? The next question to think about is, what does it do? What does this piece of equipment do? What is its function? And when you're thinking about what is its function, think about, does it replace other items that I already have? Will it save me time and money in the long run? And will it help me achieve my creative goals? Now, those are some questions that probably only you can answer. The other thing to think about is, do I need to buy a lot of accessories to use this piece of equipment? So for example, if I was to think about a die cutting machine like a Sizzix or a Cuttlebug, I can't use that machine without buying embossing folders or cutting dies. So for any piece of equipment that you're thinking of buying, ask yourself the question, do I need to buy accessories to use this? And if I do, how much are they? Can I get them second-hand, or is this piece of equipment too new for things to be on the second-hand market yet? The other thing to think about is how long will this piece of equipment last? What's its expected lifespan? And on a very practical level, do I have the desk or storage space for this item? Because let's face it, it's no point buying the biggest brand new whizzy cutting machine and then finding that you've got nowhere to put it, or it's taking up so much space in your craft area that you don't have room for anything else. Or if you don't have a dedicated craft area, think about how easy is this item to get out and set up each time I want to use it. So those are some questions to think about when you're buying some of those bigger ticket items. The other things I would say is get on YouTube, get online, check out the reviews for the product that you're thinking about buying. You will find reviews out there, and go for reviews that are not sponsored. I would always say check out who is sponsoring this video, who is sponsoring this review, and go for the independent ones, or go for sources that you trust, and make sure they're just not being paid to promote this particular item. So there you go, folks. That really is the end of today's video. I hope some of those questions have been useful for you, and I will summarize those at the end of this video so that you can just do a screenshot if you want to. And I will also, again, I'll put them into a Word doc and I'll put them over on my Facebook page. So feel free to have a quick trip over there and check it out. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and happy crafting on a budget.